This is Victor Antonio. You're listening to WCGO, Harv Roman, the baddest man in Chicago.
Years ago, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, came to pay the price. He died on Calvary, sacrifice, just so you and I would have life. It's all written in that reading device that you seem to call man's made advice. Hello, he was more than just being nice. If he could, I bet he would do it twice. But then again, what do you care, ungrateful? You rather spend the rest of your life being hateful, never ever taking the time to give your father up above thanks for what he did out of love. So come on, man, what's the deal? It's time to get real. It's all about faith, so forget how you feel. Now you're taking a little hit off the rock of salvation. I bet you get hooked off the manifestation of the Holy Ghost, cause it's got the most glory to God. Yo, man, here's another dose. I'm the motivated Christian kid with the lyrics, strictly guided by the Holy Spirit, breaking every single yoke and chain of the devil, cause he who lives in me is of a higher level. Jesus is Lord, named above every name, and Satan can't stop the game. Sing it. Ain't no stopping us now. Ain't no stopping us now. Ain't no stopping us now. You're one of those religious freaks talking crazy, talking about rap music don't amaze me. Well, he who has an ear, let him hear. Yo, this is for you, not from mine, but from God's point of view. I'm sure you got yours, but this is my gift. The Lord has anointed me to uplift. I gave my life to Christ, and this is what I heard. Go into the world and preach the word. So now I'm on the mic, and you say it ain't right, cause this style of music ain't your type. Well, if David from the book of Psalms go here tonight, I bet he be on the dance floor getting hype. You need to know the truth before you start dissing. That's why it should be slow to speak and quick to listen. Just let the Holy Ghost take control, so he can put a little rhythm in your soul. Ain't no stopping us now. Ain't no stopping us now.
AM 1590 is WCGO Radio in Chicago, where Chicago goes for celebrity conversations early on a Saturday morning. In the back of your head right now is Lazarus. You might be his Facebook buddy right now as MC Laz. We have reconnected recently via the Facebook. Lazarus, or MC Laz, was a staff member over at the Union League Boys and Girls Club years ago, and part of what he did was not only running the library program, but he took some of our rougher kids and he gave them a format in which they could do some learning and they could do some expressing through song and through dance and through rap, and it was very, very cool. And we did a talent show years ago in which he took some of those kids and they performed, and they surprised anybody who knew them because it was so out of character of them to end up singing and dancing and rapping when everybody looked at them as the tough kids of the club. So sitting ovation for Lazaro, MC Laz. And I decided to go ahead and play that because recently MC Laz and myself have reconnected via Facebook, and it's very, very cool that he's doing well in Florida, and the kids that he impacted back then are doing well themselves. And I am right here at AM 1590 WCGO Radio with a Chicago theme for our celebrity conversation. So you've got Laz playing in the background, you've got me right on the microphone, and on the celebrity hotline, one of Chicago's very own from Wells High School. He is doing really well as a motivational speaker, an inspiration to a lot of businesses and people throughout. He was here recently for a conference in which he was helping business people, get motivated about what they're doing, and such a positive force. And when I had the opportunity to reconnect with one of my Wells High School class of 1981 mates, how could I not do it? To the celebrity hotline we go. To the celebrity hotline we go. To someone who I don't believe I have seen face to face since 1981. Victor Antonio, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. 1981. Don't count the years, my friend. Don't count the years. It's just too long.
This is kind of insane because I honestly don't remember who I was talking to a few years ago when we were trying to compare notes because we were doing all the math and figuring out, trying to do maybe a reunion for Wells High, the class of 81, which we were both a part of, and somebody said, well, you know what Victor's doing now, don't you? Well, there were 3 Victor Gonzalez's back then, so I had to kind of do the roll call. I know one's a lawyer. I didn't know what the other one was doing, And then the third, the tallest of the Victor Gonzalez's back then, I was told was making big noise as a motivational speaker, and I looked you up, and yeah, you're making big noise.
I think I am, man. Little by little, man. I've been grinding at it for the last, 10 years. I've been going at the speaking business. And so let me explain something, because I know I'm going to get a question later on, or listeners going to want to ask a question. Victor Gonzalez, but you'll find me under Victor Antonio. Victor Antonio is my middle name. So it's Victor Antonio Gonzalez, and I started using Antonio just because there were too many Gonzalez's in the world, and I thought I needed a cooler name to differentiate myself in the market. But yeah, I am him, and again, it's been about 10 years in the business, and I think I'm starting to make a little bit of noise. So I'm getting there, Harv. You know how business is. You got to work hard at it, and it takes a long time to get there.
Well, welcome back to your hometown, and we know that you're here for the National Conference and Career Fair, which is happening. Where is this at now? This is
the Congress Plaza. It's National Hispanic Sales Network. Great organization. This is the second year they invited me back to speak, which I'm honored to be part of. And it's really a great organization because, I don't know if we talked about this, Harv, before we got on the phone call, but, one of the things I truly believe is that every person is a salesperson. You got to either sell yourself, you sell a product, you sell an idea, you sell a goal, you sell a vision. And the National Hispanic Sales Network is really about creating, top salespeople who are Hispanic and can really go out there and help them with certain tools to really grow their business or even be better performers within their corporate America job.
Well, and then it comes at a great time because, of course, we're smack dab in the middle of Latino Heritage Month. I like to say Latino strictly because there's no Hispania, so I'm trying to figure out where Hispanic came from, but that's the term that everybody recognizes it.
George Lopez said it the best. He says he was asked that question. George, what do you prefer, Hispanic or Latino, right? He says, I have a hard time. He says, but if I had to choose, he says Latino, and they asked him the follow-up question was, why? He says, well, when I look at the word Hispanic, he says, I don't want to be associated with any word that has the word panic in it. And I thought that was so brilliant. So, Latino, Hispanic, take your pick.
Well, that is great because George and we actually, believe it or not, go back to 1991-92 before anybody really knew.
I know that. I did not know that.
Yeah, we got together way back when. I read something about him going to be in Aurora, and I was doing a radio show over at 90.5 FM, and at that point, there were not very many comics that were Latino. So I'm looking at George Lopez coming to Aurora, and I made a phone call, and the next thing you know, we did a few interviews. At the time, I was working at the Boys and Girls Club over here, not far from Wells High School, and he came to hang out with the kids at the Boys and Girls Club because, he didn't have a whole lot to do besides do comedy shows, and fortunately, we have ended up, we became friends, we've kept in contact, and through all of his celebrity, he is one of those who have never changed from 1992 to now. He's still George, which is very, very cool because a lot of times people think that people change. I would imagine at some point when people think about Victor Antonio, the kid that grew up, near Wells, that maybe they think, well, that kid's changed too. And I guess if you go by the yearbooks, you've changed physically because your hair went somewhere. but,
yeah, I used to have beautiful golden little locks, right? Well, not golden, just deep, rich black locks. Curls, and back in the day when Jerry curls were in style. Today I'm fully bald, but yeah, things have changed. I put on a couple more pounds, but I often, I think people are pleasantly surprised when they finally connect with me. I think when people pick up the phone and talk to me, they go, okay, he hasn't changed. I like to think I haven't changed. I think I've grown a little wiser and smarter, but you can't forget your roots, Harv. You know how this works, is that you just can't forget where you've come from. You can never deny that piece of who you are. And more, when I do these events, they're getting quite bigger, obviously, and it's always nice, Harv. This is the part I like, is that at the end of one of my presentations or something, one of my motivational keynotes, I always have, I'm going to say, a mom. And it's a Puerto Rican mom, a Mexican mom, doesn't matter, but it's a Latina mom that comes up to me and always wants to just hug me and just say, it's so cool to see one of us up there. And that right there is what always makes me feel good. So I really try to always remember where I'm from and realize that sometimes you just need to see somebody doing it so you can believe you can do it yourself. I think that's really cool about my business.
Well, you know what, Victor? That's absolutely true. One of my club kids has grown up. Her name is Christina Pena, and she's grown up, and she's doing some motivational speaking on her own. And we've talked about it for years that you just do a Google search and you will not find Latinos in this line of work. So, kids are getting their motivation from Latinos in other ways. It could be athletics, it could be acting, but they're not always relatable ways. Now, in what you've been able to do in the business world, that does become relatable because, in essence, it's hard work as opposed to born with a talent.
You got it. I think you're right. But I like to zoom back. Here's kind of my perspective on life. When I look at, obviously we want to see Latinos, but I always tell myself, okay, it doesn't matter who's on stage or who I'm looking at. I always say, who are the best? Who are the best of the best? I studied people like Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn. These are people who are not Latino, but I studied them. And I always said to myself, what if I could become the Latino version of those two masters? That's kind of what I always said to myself. So I always tell people that even if you don't see a role model, find someone who's Latino, find a role model in general, and then say to yourself, maybe I could be the Latino version of that.
Music's gonna end and you feel like you can't go on, just hold on tight and don't let go. That dream is headed your way, and it doesn't matter what they say, and it doesn't matter how they feel. All that matters what's in your heart, as long as you love what you do. Be happy with what you do, be happy with what you say. I need to see you smile for me. Be happy with what you do, be happy with what you say. Slide with me. Now they come out fourth quarter, trying to tell you what's wrong with you. They don't even know what they're saying. They don't even have a clue. And it doesn't matter what they say, and it doesn't matter how they feel. All that matters what's in your heart, as long as you love. Be happy with what you do, be happy with what you say.
And that's what I think we should look for. There's role models everywhere. Whether they're Latino or not, I don't think it makes a difference, because what we want to do is honor the best of the best. And then when we can imbue that and mix it in with a little Latino spice and give it our twist, that's when I think people begin to differentiate themselves.
I also have to say this because I don't want to forget. As I was preparing for the Celebrity Hotline conversation, of course I have to run to your Facebook, find out what the latest is in case, I want to talk about stuff. And Victor Antonio, not necessarily an update on the conference, not necessarily, words of wisdom. It's a picture of a chicken place.
Oh,
I mean,
okay, so what's the picture of a chicken place, right?
Yeah.
So I'm visiting family here in Chicago. So I was born and raised in Chicago. We were raised on, my family lived, if you know where Ashland or Levantia is, by Ashland and North Avenue. That's where I was born and raised, right across from Burr Elementary High School. And so all my family's here in Chicago. I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm currently at. So I'm in town visiting, obviously, for the conference as well. But this morning, I said, let me take a walk down Fullerton Avenue, right? Over here by Austin and Narragansett, kind of in between there. And so I'm walking, and then I see these live chickens right up against the window, right? Now, I don't see the awning. You're seeing the picture of the awning, right?
Right, exactly.
Of the actual name of the actual place, right, the establishment. But I'm walking by, I said, why are these live chickens here? And I realized people are actually buying chickens, live chickens, and I look in the window, and there's this, whole pen of live chickens in there. And this is, as live and fresh as you can get. And I'm like, man, only in Chicago, I think, you're going to find something like this. I can't remember the last time I found a place like that.
Well, I'll tell you right now, you're going to remember as soon as I say it. There was a live chicken place that still to this day is still open across the street from Goldblatt's on Chicago Avenue.
you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Gold Blast, is Chicago Avenue in what, Augusta?
It is still open right around Chicago and right after Paulina, that little side street that we used to walk to school, and there was a big old car garage there. But it's right across from Gold Blast. And Gold Blast is on Paulina and Chicago Avenue, between Paulina and Ashland Avenue, and you can still, buy live.
Look, I live in Atlanta, Georgia, man. I'm out in the country, and I don't see stuff like this. So to see something like this in the city, I had to take a picture of it and post it on Facebook. I had to do it.
Well, but that just goes to prove that no matter who you've become in terms of the world of Victor Antonio, you're basically still you Victor from the hood, and something amazed you enough that you wanted to brag about it and share it with us, which is actually pretty neat.
Oh, it's funny because, I get that a lot by the way, the whole Jenny from the block. I get the Victor from the hood a lot because I don't mind sharing where I'm from. Every time I come to Chicago, I either post a video, some pictures, because, again, when you're from the city, there's some certain insight perspectives that you have, the chicken place being one of them, that, when my friends in Georgia see this, they're going to be like, what? And so, like I said, that's kind of me saying, I know where I'm from, and I know where I'm from. But I should tell you this. I think you'll love this, Harv. When we were little, my family was originally from Puerto Rico. And so I remember as a little kid, I was about, I'm going to say 9. I'm guessing at the age, but about 9. And my uncle, I remember he would drive to Wisconsin, I believe, right? And he had one of those old station wagons. Harv, do you remember those old station wagons with the wood grain panel on the side?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Sometimes they had stickers on it of horses and cows and stuff.
Yeah. But anyway, so he comes. So what he would do is go out there and buy some chickens, and he would bring them back into the city, and he would load them up into this station wagon. But one day, he comes and he has a pig tied up in the back of the station wagon. He then lowers the backside to reveal the chicken, the pig, right? Pulls the head out. And if you know how to make morcilla and how morcilla is made, then you'll know what happened right after that. And that was my first time I ever witnessed, killing livestock in the alleys of Chicago.
That is bad.
And we took the chickens inside, I remember. You know how we do with the chicken, right? The whole neck snapping thing, old school, right? And then I remember boiling them with my parents in pots, and I would sit there and actually pluck them out. They'd open them up. We'd, gut the chickens the whole bit. I remember stuffing, blood sausages, morcillas, from that pig that my uncle just killed in the alley in Chicago. So I don't know if you can get more hood than that. But those are my roots.
Yeah.
How's that?
The closest story I could tell you is when we used to go to the Indiana First Baptist Church, the bus that used to come get us from the neighborhood.
Oh, I remember that, Harv. I remember that. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, they gave us. There was one time, like for Easter, they passed out little chickies, and so we got live chickies to take home, and it was a pet for a while. And then my father, it grew, and there's pictures. My mother still has pictures of this chicken hanging out with Lucetto and Tiger, the 2 dogs that we had. And and it eventually grew enough that my father decided to take care of business right outside on Erie and Hoyne. And so much for my gift from the First Baptist Church of Hammond, Indiana.
Well, I'm going to try to make you cry now, Harv. You ready? I'm going to try to make you cry, Harv. So I got one of those chickens, right? It turned out to be a rooster, right? First Baptist Church, get us to go out there, gave us a little rooster, right? A little chicken. It turned out to be a rooster, right? So I'm nurturing this rooster in my basement, right? It's growing, and this rooster's getting bigger, right? And I called the rooster Pee-wee. Okay, that was the name of my rooster, Pee-wee.
Wow.
Now, I've never told anybody this on a radio interview, or this is an exclusive, okay? And so I remember my parents complaining because now it started, that, crowing in the morning, right? Because it's a rooster. And the neighbors were getting a little mad, and I guess my mother was getting irritated, my father was getting irritated. And I remember coming home one day from school, and I go downstairs, and I look in the cage, and Pee-wee is gone. And so I'm like, where's Pee-wee? And nobody knew how to tell me that, I don't know if it was my mother or my father, but sold it to my uncle. And when I went to ask my uncle, I said, where's Pee-wee? He said, who's Pee-wee? He said, the rooster. I said, oh, the rooster. I said, man, that was good soup.
Oh, jeez.
I almost cried right in front of him. I'm like, what? And he ate my rooster. Oh, that was hard, man. That was hard. That was a moment for me.
That
Just a city boy
got to be something that's in the Puerto Rican culture of our parents, because my father did the same thing to a turtle that we used to have. And I'm not going to keep... we could tell these stories forever. My father used to fish in Yorkville, and he brought a turtle home, and we had a big ponchera, and the turtle grew really big. And eventually the turtle was given supposedly to my little brother's godfather, and it turned out that that it too became a meal. And it's horrible when you're a kid, because you're thinking these are pets, you're feeding them, and the next thing you know, that's bad. You're right.
And that's and by the way, that's hood, that's real world, you know. And again, if you talk to people, it's funny, because I've met people when we lived in Minnesota for 10 years, and even now in Georgia. I'm a little far from Georgia. Again, you talk to people who come from the farm, they're like, yeah, what's your point, Victor? This happened to us all the time, you know? It was very commonplace. But when you're a city kid, like we were, that's not common. It's very uncommon for that to happen. So, a little traumatic experience. I've gone through therapy, chicken therapy. I think I'm fine now, Harv.
There you go. Talking about your cityfulness, we were both at Wells at the same time. Kind of interesting, because there's a video that you put up, part of your documentary, and you and your film crew actually went back to 936 North Ashland, and you were showing off the area that you grew up in, which these days is a lot different than when we were there. But still, there's got to be a culture shock to go back to where you came from and say, okay, and look at it now, and look at what it was like when we were kids.
Oh, it is. If today somebody goes, like today, somebody goes to Ashland, New Wabansia, and you'll see the Burr Elementary School there, right across the school, you'll still see our old house there. But everything around it has been gentrified, right? New condos and everything, but that house is still there. Now, I told this story yesterday to somebody, and somebody gave me a great response. He said, Victor, the reason they haven't torn that house down is because they know one day you're going to be real famous, and that's going to be a historical landmark. And I thought that was so cool. But yeah, it's still there, man.
Well, there you go. And then you can go back to Wells and say, this is where I came from, and this is what you're able to do. And that's what makes your story so unique, because there were so many of us that grew up in the area. And again, 30 years or so ago, the area was not what it was like now. So those of us who were coming up and growing up at Wells back then, and I went to Talcott Elementary School, you're talking about food stamps. You're talking about eventually the generic aisles where everything was labeled in black and white and gold.
Yes.
And
yes. I think people forget that. I mean, that area around that time was a lot of gangs, right? Whether you had Latin Kings, Disciples, Imperial Gangsters, Insane Unknowns, Flops, so many different gangs. I remember that it was always, you can go 3 blocks one way and you're in another, you're in one gangster. If you go another few blocks more, and that's another gang. And it was very dangerous, and it was pretty much a predominantly black and Hispanic area. And so when you look at it today, and you try to tell people, hey, this is how it used to be, where sometimes walking at night wasn't the safest thing to do. But today we see people walking around with lattes and driving little bikes or riding little bikes around. You're going, that's not how it used to be.
Yeah, can you imagine if those divvy bike racks were out there back then? How long would those bicycles last?
Look, let's be honest here. Back in the day, either we built the bike or we stole the bike. You know what I mean? Because we were so poor, it was just one of those realities. I remember I chose to build the bike. And I remember I would go to junkyards. There was a couple of junkyards in that area. There was one off of, I believe it was North Avenue and I think Damon or something like that. And we would take, we would go there and try to get bike parts. And I would always put these Frankenstein bikes together, right? And those were always my bikes. And I try to tell my kids these stories because, today they can go buy a new bike over at Target like it's, not a big deal. But we used to have to build them because we didn't have the money. I also tell the story about how I used to collect cans, and I think you'll love this story. We didn't have money, so you couldn't really ask your parents for money, right? And so we used to, remember when candy was a penny or a nickel?
Yeah, penny candy was actually a penny.
Yeah, penny candy was actually a penny, and then you can buy a Mr. Freeze or something. I mean, you can actually have fun with, 10, remember when a quarter, 25 cents was like a lot of money. And I remember we used to collect cans. I don't know if you did this, Harv, but we used to collect cans just to make some money. And I remember just going through neighborhoods, going through empty lots. We collect bottles, we collect cans, just trying to scrape together, whether it's 25 cents, 50 cents. Typically, it was 25 cents to buy some candy, another 25 cents to buy a comic book. And that was hustling back then. You were always out in the street. Today, kids are inside. They're playing their video games, Grand Theft Auto, whatever it may be, they're playing the game. And as you know, back in the day, you pretty much got home, did your homework real quick, and you shot out the door.
That was it.
And you didn't come back till when? When was the time to get back home?
Well, if you were in my family, if the lights got dim, you better be home.
There you go. You understand. When the street lights came on, boom, you better start going. And it would get dim first, right? And then you start seeing the dimming. You're like, okay, I think it's time to go home. But we were always in the streets. And I think there was something healthy about that because, you learn how to kind of do it not a lot.
Well, it's healthy in more than one way because there's a social aspect to growing up that we had that kids these days don't have, and then there's the physical health on top of that. If you're playing pinners or 3 outs or fast pitching or basketball in the schoolyard.
Oh, wait, Harv, stop yourself. See, most people don't even know what pinners is. And we're not going to explain this on the show, but the fact that you know when somebody's from the hood when they understand pinners. Because that was the game to play, right? Pinners. Got to play some pinners tonight. And so, we played baseball. We played anything we could find to entertain ourselves. We played 1, 2, 3 red light because you didn't need a lot of people, right? Kick the can was also a big deal. All these things. We would play in the alleys where we could play, the streets.
Well, you played whatever your budget allowed.
Yeah, which was, we almost had a zero budget, so we played whatever we could. But, we tried to find like a rubber ball. Remember, we played fast pitch against the wall, draw the little box on the wall, play a little stick ball, and then you hope that somebody in the neighborhood had a basketball. That was our hope all the time. Who has a basketball? That was always the big question, right? Who has a basketball?
And if you didn't have a rim, you got a milk crate, and you would cut out the bottom. And
you get a bicycle rim, take out all the spokes, and nail it to the actual telephone pole.
Wow, we could talk like this forever, but let's talk a little bit about your days at Wells. What do you remember from your days at Wells before it was the community academy that it is now? It was basically Wells High School back then with McGee and Smiley and people like that.
Smiley, for those people who don't know Wells at the time, Smiley was I don't know if he was Polish, but he was a police officer, our version of Officer Friendly.
AM 1590 WCGO Radio in Chicago, where Chicago goes for Celebrity Hotline Conversations on a Saturday morning, and also for some classic inspirational house music. That is Joe Smooth with Promised Land. We also heard George Lamont music, Don't Stop Believing. We heard Georgie Porgy music from Chicago with his Be Happy song. At the top of the hour was MC Laz with Ain't No Stopping Us Now. And throughout the first half hour, our Celebrity Hotline Conversation guest, Victor Antonio, of course, he's one of us, a Blue Raider from Wells High School who has done very, very well as a motivational speaker, and he has a YouTube channel, and he's got almost like 500 videos on his YouTube channel. Look for it. I think it's The Motivator on YouTube, or Victor Antonio, just search for it. And the first half hour of this particular edition of our Celebrity Conversation, we've heard from Victor Antonio in ways that most people probably haven't. If you've heard interviews with him before, yes, he talks about, his motivation and the things that he does for businesses and for people and for communities. In our first half hour, we had flashbacks from the neighborhood. So in the second half hour, we continue with our Celebrity Hotline Conversation with Victor Antonio, Chicago's very own, because it is Latino Hispanic Heritage Month, and he's one of us, and we're one of him. And when we return, we'll hear more conversation. And I promise you, there'll be some nice motivational words, not just stories about chickens on Chicago Avenue.
Denzel Washington for the Boys and Girls Clubs.
In my hand, I'm holding a 2-inch by 3-inch piece of paper that has changed the lives of millions of young people. It's kept them off drugs, out of gangs, and in school. Now, what could be that powerful and still fit in the palm of my hand? A membership card from the Boys and Girls Clubs. Every day, another 300 kids will join clubs all across the country. That's 300 kids who will be picking up a membership card instead of a gun or a needle or a knife. You know, too many people feel like they can't make a difference, but I'm telling you this. Put this card in the hands of a child, and you will change that child's life. Do that, and you can change the world. It's up to all of us. Support a program that works. The Boys and Girls Clubs, the positive place for kids.
For more information and to find out how you can support the Boys and Girls Clubs, call 1-800-854-CLUB. That's 1-800-854-CLUB.
Wake up. Wake up dancing. Wake up dancing. Wake up dancing. Harv is gonna make you dance. Wake up dancing. Wake up dancing. Wake up dancing. Wake up, Harv is gonna make you dance.
That's me right here at 1590 AM WCGO Radio in Chicago. Also 1590 WCGO.com. So you could be listening on the AM, you could be listening to the live stream, or if you want to check out the podcast, we premiered the podcast at www.wakeupdancing.com. Boy, that theme song came in loud, didn't it? Yes, the old DJ and me just blasting it out. We got to do a scroll call, right? So many of you have checked in throughout the week, and I kind of feel bad if I don't mention you because, you know, you check in on the Facebook, and why not? Maria, Venus, Yvette, Trini, Natalie, Bossy, Sweet, Cicella, Gladys, Angelina, Louie, Samantha, Moises, Sabrina, Jennifer, Donnie, Destiny, Bill, Berto from Talca 77, Nadine, Marcelino, also from Talca, Mike, John, Nilda, Layla, Blanca, John, Myra, Jacqueline, Anasali, Jazine, the Talca class of 77, trying to get back together very, very soon. Elisardi, Jeanette, Mary, Nathaniel, Doris, Carmela, Nancy, Carmen, Sonaida, Louis, Juan, Ocean, Sonia, Emily, Chrissy, Alma, Rossi, and Paul, all checking in. Paul, a former club kid, but the club that I was at that point was the club over on 28th and Ridgeway, which housed WCYC Radio. So Paulie remembers that, and he checks in on the Facebook as he went clickety-click. And we will continue to do our own clickety-clicking right here at 1590 AM. I always thank you for tuning in because it is early on a Saturday morning. But if you can't catch the 6 o'clock broadcast, go to www.wakeupdancing.com and you can clickety-click whenever you feel like it. When we return, more of our celebrity conversation with Victor Antonio. In the meanwhile, it's musical stuff and stuff. This is Mr. Lee, Pump Up Chicago. See, it's a Chicago theme.
London. The streets are mean. This ain't no joke. It'll make you choke. You got to come strong. Your dreams carry on. Pump up London's word. Pump it up. This ain't no pump it up. Pump it up. Pump it up. Pump it up. Pump it up.
in high school who was pretty much an enforcer.
He was either Officer Friendly or Officer Krupke from West Side Story.
Yeah, I'll take the last part, the latter. But he was always that guy, the enforcer. But back then, what I remember, and I'll just give you personal reflection, what I remember is I was a really skinny kid, right? Insecure, really skinny, insecure kid going into high school. I didn't really fit in, I think, in a lot of places. So I was always that kid that was, it's not that I was an outcast or anything. I just never felt comfortable. I was always insecure, try to be quiet, believe it or not. And my second year, I was still kind of like that. Somewhere in my third or fourth year, before I graduated, somewhere in the third year, I don't know what happened. Maybe I got a little more confident. I realized that, you can be friendly with people. And I remember that being, third year for me was when things started to change in high school for the better. Not that things were bad, but it's just like I started feeling comfortable with who I am. You're growing into your body, your skin, who you are. And I don't know if you know this, or if you check the yearbook, but I was voted prom king.
Yeah, I do remember that. I think it
blew my mind.
I think it was a white tux.
I was like not expecting that. And if you look at my picture, I'm still a skinny kid. I think my Adam's apple was the biggest part of my neck. You know what I mean?
I think it was a white suit with red
all I remember is my mother at home would always say, get good grades or I'm going to break out the chancleta, right? The sandal, whack, right? So I was always about getting the good grades. And then by the third year, I had a little job, that was paying minimum wage at the time. So all I remember is going to school and just trying to get good grades. And what changed for me also, I think this is where one of the biggest changes came. I joined band. Were you ever in band? I don't know if you were in band, Harv.
No, I didn't do band. I didn't do ROTC. I was in the journalism group, and I was in the WCA for a while.
Okay, so I was in band, and Mr. Thompson, I think, was the head of he was the band leader.
Yeah, Floyd Thompson.
I was playing trombone at the time, and I remember I didn't want to play trombone. I wanted to play drums, but Wells didn't have a lot of drums because we didn't have a big budget. So one guy had already gotten the drums, so I couldn't do that. And I said, can I play sax? Because I was thinking sax was cool and sexy. He says, man, Victor, we don't have an extra sax for you. I said, man, what do you got? Well, we got a tuba or a trombone. And I was like, I'm not playing the tuba, man. I'm already skinny. This is going to look really bad wrapping the tuba around this skinny frame, so I went for the trombone. And when I started playing the musical instrument, I think that began to change for me also. Who I was, I started believing in myself. We started doing more concerts. So what I remember from Wells is I came in very insecure about who I was. I think by the time I emerged the other side, I was a little more confident, but I knew I wanted to go to college. You know what I mean? I knew I wanted to go to college because I knew that the ticket to college was, as I pointed out in my documentary, The Motivator, which people can find online if they just search The Motivator on YouTube, is I really wanted to get a job and make some money because, again, I was the youngest of 7, and nobody had ever gotten a 4-year degree. And my mother was really hoping that I would be the first one. And so my mother's praying for me to go to college, and the fact that my father says, if you don't go to college, you're going to work with me in a factory. And it was a really nasty, dirty job. So you picked factory or college. And I was like, okay, this choice is going to be very easy. But, high school for me was, some of the best years, if you know what I mean, Harv.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because, again, we're talking maybe a generation ago where not all of our parents told us that college was the thing to do. A lot of our parents were saying, you need to go to work, you need to help with the bills, because, work, number one, work was hard to find, and with our parents, my mother turned 75, I think, this year, and with her, it was pretty much a minimum wage job trying to raise 4 of us. So college, in a lot of our minds back then, wasn't the attainable thing. The attainable thing was, I got to get a job.
Yeah. By the way, we were in the same boat, but because I was the youngest, some of my sisters were already working. My brother was working. And so it was just one thing about, God, it would be nice if one of us went to college type of thing. And also, again, I saw when my brother dropped out of high school, he went to work at the factory with my father. And he didn't last, I think, more than a year. And when I saw what he went through, that was also an incentive for me not to want to work. So people always ask me, Victor, what motivated you to go to college? The primary motivator was pure fear. I didn't want to work at a factory. I didn't want a low-paying job. And college, for me, was truly the turning point in my life. And I tell this to everybody, and it's in my documentary, because for the first time, I got to interact. Remember, our school was predominantly Hispanic and Black, right. African American. And so we didn't get to experience really anything outside of that. But when you go to college, all of a sudden, you know, you're dealing with majority Caucasian, but all of a sudden you got Middle Easterns, you got Asians, by that I mean Japanese, Chinese, and everything in between, right? You got Africans, then you got Latin Americans from like Latin America. And all of a sudden I started getting a different perspective on who I was and how I related to the world. So it was really a culture shock for me when I went to college.
And then from college, I'm going to try to figure out the transition because obviously you became a professional, you became a salesperson, and then becoming a salesperson, you know, at some point you also turned the corner where all of a sudden you're doing the speaking engagements and you're talking to business people and you're motivating people. How did the transition go from being a professional to deciding, you know what, I think I'm going to start talking to people? Was it something like you were just informally talking to people and advising people, and then you said, wait a minute, that makes a lot of sense, and people thought that you might have to share?
Yeah, it's a complicated, you know, it's always like, you know, unintended consequences, and it's very complicated. But I'll try to give you the shortest version I can. I'm in college. I did go for an engineering degree. I go for an engineering degree because it's all about the money. I need to make money. So I graduated from college, started working. My first job was almost $30,000. It was $28,500 a year, almost $30,000 a year. And I'm like happy, finally making some money. $30,000 a year was a lot of money at that time. And so I'm making money, and by my second or third year, I'm like, man, I don't like this engineering stuff. I really don't. I'm like, my God, what am I going to do? I don't like this stuff. And then I started doing different jobs like application engineer, software engineer, customer service engineer. And then something else happened. In that time frame, I met my wife, the woman who was going to become my wife. We got married, and I'm working for a company in Minnesota, and my wife gives me the blessed news that we're going to have our first child, right? That also means that she now no longer is going to work, and I got to figure out a way to make more money. Coincidentally, I met a guy there, his name was Jose Santana, who was a salesman, who said, hey, one way to make money is to go into sales, Victor. And I was really. And so at that point, an opportunity popped up where I can actually move from engineering into sales to make more money. And so I went into sales to make more money. Again, following the money again. So I'm doing sales for a lot of years and became very successful. And it was the first time, Harv, that it was like, man, you know how you find your place in life? It's like, I'm sure with you with radio, it's like with that golden voice of yours, it's like, this is where I belong. For me in sales, it was the same thing. This is where I belong. Then I'm working in corporate America for many years, doing exceptionally well. My last job was president of sales and marketing for a $420 million company. But then I said, I'm tired of doing this. What do I want to do now? Well, many years ago, I saw Zig Ziglar, the speaker, speak, and I said, one day I want to do something like that. Well, guess what? Back in 2001, I made that decision to do something just like that. And that's how I got into the world of sales/motivation. How's that for a nutshell wrap up?
But how were you received back then? Because like you said a little while ago, the Latino presence in that particular area really isn't what it should be. Even today, but 10 years ago, 12 years ago, you may have been the only one.
Oh, I was one of the very few Latinos, Hispanics who were actually in the speaking business. There are a few out there, very good ones out there. And what happened was, my name again was Victor Gonzalez, right? That's Victor Gonzalez. And true story, not making this up. This is the real story behind the Victor Antonio, using my middle name. Is I remember that I would only get booked to speak. You know, again, initially nobody would pay me. Then they saw I was pretty good. They said, we'll pay you a little bit of money. Then we'll pay you a little more. But then I realized that they will only book me in September, October, Hispanic month, right?
Oh, jeez.
In that time frame. And so first I was pigeonholed because of my last name, Gonzalez. Like Gonzalez is like the Smith of Spanish people. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so people would pigeonhole me as a Hispanic speaker. And I'm like, well, I'm a little more than that. But again, the name just overrode everything. Then, believe it or not, and I don't mean this in a bad way to offend anybody, but people kept introducing me as Victor Garcia, Victor Gomez. I got Victor Hernandez. One of my favorites, Hector, Gonzalez. But the one that really, just really pushed me over the edge, como dicen en español, derramó la gota que derramó el vaso. The final straw was when somebody introduced me as Hector Rodriguez.
Boy.
At an event. True, Harv, I couldn't make that up. And it's funny because somebody asked me, well, what did you do? I said, well, with this sense of humor, I do what everybody else does. So I take to the stage, and I just say, Hector Rodriguez was not able to make it today. But I, Victor Gonzalez, had decided to substitute for him. And I remember that the guy who introduced me, American, Caucasian, felt so bad afterwards. I mean, he apologized profusely. I'm like, well, it's okay. Okay, I understand. No worries. But I remember I going home that day, I said, that's it. I'm going to just start I'm going to rebrand myself as Victor Antonio, my middle name, and just do that. And I got to say, Harv, it's fascinating and sad at the same time. Within 6 to 9 months, I started getting more bookings because of my name change. And that's how that transition began. That's when, it just became more acceptable, Victor Antonio. Plus, it sounds more Hollywood, if you know what I mean.
Right. If somebody went on YouTube and looked at some of your videos and were inspired by those videos, I like that you kind of cut them up, too, so you don't have to sit, for a couple of hours at a time. You can pick and choose. What is that experience like to when you're speaking to a group of people that have decided, you know what, I'm going to invest in this because I'm about to learn from somebody who's about to impact my life?
It's a humbling experience. And I don't say that to be humble. It truly is humbling. Yesterday when I did the National Hispanic Sales Network, I delivered my stuff from the front of the stage, some new material I put together. And for those of you listening, I have, as of today, like 500 videos, more or less, on YouTube, if you search Victor Antonio, right? And as you pointed out, many are from like 3 to 5 minutes. And it's always interesting how somebody in the audience always comes up to me and says, the only reason I came to this event was to see you live. He says, and then they'll tell me stories. And if you watch my movie, I know you have, but for those who haven't watched or listening to this, again, the movie's called The Motivator. Under Victor Antonio, look it up. And in the movie, I don't know if you remember Harv, but there's a young man who comes up to me during the filming, and we filmed this, obviously, who says to me, you know what, I heard you a year ago, and you motivated me to start my own business. And I want to give you my business card because here's my business. And that has happened, I can't tell you how many times, that I've motivated somebody to start their own business, pursue their passion, go after what they want. And that right there is when you say, that's cool. Life is very cool when that happens.
Well, on my Facebook earlier this week, when I was pushing the fact that I was lucky enough to score an interview with you, Christina, the same girl that I told you about, looked at your video and she types back into the box, Octavio Mateo.
Yeah, my man Octavio, yeah. Did she know him?
No, she didn't know him. But she watched everything that she could, and that was the name that sprung out at her as the impact statement of your presentations on those videos.
Wow. Well, for those of you listening, if you haven't seen the documentary, Fabio Mateo was one. There's a Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers called SHIP. That's an organization. Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. Octavio Mateo was the person in charge of that organization. And I remember that in my first year of college, I was having such a hard time. I mean, I was like literally up failing everything. And I remember I dropped out, and it was Octavio Mateo who convinced me and my mother, basically, that I should go back to school. And to this day, if it wasn't for him nudging me back in to reapply, because I literally withdrew from the university. I was at the Illinois Institute of Technology, dropped all my classes, withdrew, and my plan was to take a semester off. And he's like, whoa, 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 not that. And again, he talked me into coming back. And it took me 5.5 years to graduate. But if it wasn't for that guy just kind of reaching back into the hood, says, no, man, you can do it, man. You can do it. Come on, let's go.
AM 1590 WCGO Radio in Chicago. Harv, Roman, Victor Antonio on the Celebrity Hotline, talking about conferencing, talking about Latino leadership, talking about growing up in areas where people didn't think we would amount to a whole lot, and you've done a whole lot of good things. I want to, again, talk a little bit about your presentations before we go, because the one thing that stands out about your presentations compared to others, and I've been to a lot of conferences because I was in the Boys and Girls Club movement for 30-some years, you don't talk over anybody's head. You use terminology that everybody understands. You're not, I mean, yeah, you're educated, but you're not going college on people. You're basically giving them some common sense.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
You're giving some common sense language that we all could understand. There are times where I would go to conferences. I love Ken Blanchard, and I did a conference with Ken Blanchard, but I did come out of there going, okay, well done. I'm not sure what he's talking about. But when we listen to you speak, when I've watched your videos, everybody's into it. You kind of got a call and respond type thing going on too. You'll say something, they'll say something, you'll say something, so you keep them involved. I guess the bottom line is, in terms of when I've looked at your videos, you're not losing anybody in the language. You're doing some real common sense education.
Yeah, many years a good friend of mine, his name is James Anderson, Dr. James Anderson, told me something that really, really helped me feel good about myself in college, right? Because in college I had decent grades. For those of you who think you have to be great at grades, not that I'm telling you not to be, but I graduated, I don't mind sharing this with you, with a 2.63 grade point average. I really tried hard. But you got to understand, I was competing against other students who came from private schools, and I came from a public school, so I was always playing catch-up. And before you laugh at my 2.63, if you're listening at this, you're thinking that's only a C-plus average. That's fine. But let me tell you right now that the average millionaire in the United States is typically a C-plus average person. So again, it's not about the grades. I've met many 4.0s who were broke. I've employed under me many 4.0s. So I always tell people that the art of communication, which is part of the sales process, the art of communication, how you communicate, is important. And so my friend, Dr. James Anderson, said something to me, because I was telling him how I was having trouble with my classes, and he goes, Victor, let me tell you something. He says, sometimes it's not you, he says. He says, sometimes it really is the professor. And I said, what? I didn't expect that. And he said, I said, well, what do you mean? He says, the best of the best professors can take the most complex subject and break it down into its most simplest form that you can't help but understand it. Those are the best instructors. And I never forgot that. And so I can talk at a high level. I can talk ROI. I can talk about PCO, return on assets, EBITDA, all that stuff, right? But people will go, what is that? And so what I do is I break it down into basic principles. Here's all you need to know. Business is not that difficult once you break it down to its what I call irreducible primaries, the basic units. And so when I talk to people, I make it simple, and then I wrap it in a story. So it really sticks, and that's part of my style. The other part of my style, which you've noticed, I'm sure, is that I like to have fun with my audience. As you call the call and response thing, try to have fun with them, poke fun at them, bring them in, pull them in. And that came about 6-7 years ago. I was speaking, but I wasn't getting booked a lot hard or rebooked. You know what I mean? They'd bring me in 1 year, but they wouldn't bring me in the second year. And I realized that I wasn't making a lot of money, and I wasn't getting rebooked. The double problem, right? So I said, you know what? I can't control, how people are going to react, but I can control how I deliver the message.
Wow, talk about delivering the message, and then we run out of time right here at AM 1590 WCGO Radio in Chicago. Chicago has joined us this morning for a celebrity conversation with Victor Antonio. One of my classmates at Wells High School has gone on to bigger and better things as the Motivator. Look for that on YouTube, the Motivator. He also has books out, so look up Victor Antonio. We did an entire hour, and we talked about his past and his childhood and high school and college leading into what he's doing now as a motivational speaker. And we have so many more interview tracks that we are wanting to play that we're going to have to do that next Saturday. So next Saturday, part 2, another entire hour with Victor Antonio. My thanks to Victor Antonio. My thanks to you, the listener, for putting up with me, the DJ. My thanks to all of the Chicago acts. I played a lot of Chicago music. Joe Booth, Promised Land, Mr. Lee, Pump Up Chicago, Rochelle, Praying for an Angel in the back of your head right now. Tony Boom Boom Badea, also from Wells High School, with thank you. And we'll end it with thank you as we thank Victor Antonio for the Celebrity Hotline conversation. Your feedback, hit my Facebook. And next week, another hour with Victor Antonio, and we get into more of his motivational ploys.